Okay, so just draining the oil here from the sump plug, and we've also, and it's a magnetic sump plug, so we'll be having a look at that. I'm not expecting to find any metal on it, but we'll check it. And then we'll also, this big nut at the back is the sump filter. I'll take that off and we'll just check it that there's nothing in there. I'm not expecting there to be anything at all, but again, we'll just take it off and check it. And then we'll be removing the oil filter. And of course, the Mark III has a remote spin-on oil filter. I'm replacing the oil filter. But oil, look at that. I mean, it's just it's brand new, that oil. I'd expect it to be worse than that, even just at 900 miles. It's still very clear rather than being black. But obviously we're going to change it anyway. It's probably, in all honesty, it's due for an oil change now. 900 miles, it should be running, or pretty much running. So it's due for an oil change no matter what. But obviously after 10 years, we'll change it anyway. But the oil's looking very good. Yeah, so I've just checked the magnetic section of the drain plug, and yeah, there's nothing on it as expected. It's just black, gunge as you would expect. But let's wipe that off. There was no metal fragments, no iron filing type things at all on it. So perfect. So that's good news. Yeah, so I'm going to remove this large nut, which is the sort of sump filter. Again, I'm not expecting to find anything in there, but I'm just removing it just to check. And that's a very large nut, obviously. Where are you? Oh, I can't find you. You're at the bottom. Oh, come on. So yeah, so 1.5 inch focus, 1.5 inch AF. So we'll remove that just to check that all's well and there's nothing in the filter. Okay, so here's the sump filter. You can probably see it's got like a wire gauze little filter inside it. I'm sure there's absolutely nothing in there at all. I'm going to take it apart. There's just this sort of black sort of residue from the oil, which is totally normal. So it's just got this little sort of circlip here. So I'm just going to use the pliers, get rid of that circlip, take this cover plate off, so we can then take the actual gauze out just to check there's nothing in there, which I'm 90% sure there isn't, but we're just going to do it just to peace of mind, really know that we've done it, we've checked it and everything's okay. Okay, there we are, just taking it apart, cleaned it up a bit, that's all fine. So the gauze just goes back in there, gauze filter. It just picks up any large bits or whatever. It's like a secondary filter to the main spin-on filter. And the I'm trying to do this one-handed, left-handed, won't work of course. That's simply, come on, focus. That goes on top, and then we've got a circlip which I'll put on off camera obviously, and that goes just on the top to hold the caboodle together. And we're done. We won't be putting it back on straight away because I'll be annealing this copper sealing washer, and I'll be also be annealing the one for the sump plug as well, which is simply means to make the copper soft again so it seals. And to do that, all we do is heat it up till it's cherry red, and then either let it cool down or quench it. I've read so many things. Some people say quench, some people say let it cool down. I tend to quench it simply because it's very satisfying. I couldn't tell you which way is right, but heat them to cherry red, cool down or quench them, and then they'll go soft again, and so then they'll seal better. And there we are, all back together and ready to go back on the engine. So just getting ready to remove the spin-on oil filter from the rear of the bike. So I'll be removing the strap, and then I've got a tool for this is a good tool. So I like it expands and then clamps onto the filter. A good tool. So hopefully that will be good for removing this, removing the filter. I'll take the strap off, then I'll have a go at doing that. And they have this strange side bit here, so I'm never quite sure what that is for. The strap obviously clamps onto that. Now whether I to try and stop it coming undone, but I'll see if I can remove the filter without removing this sort of side strap bit, which is always a bit of a weird thing, but I suppose I put it on, it does stop it spinning off. That's all I can think of. Right, so I used this special tool to remove the filter, and I'm damn glad I had that. I don't even see the dents and that on the filter, but that filter was done up so tight, nothing. And that was with a, it's a special tool with a, socket on it. Oil's coming out now. So, but I honestly thought, was I turning it the wrong way? It was so tight, that filter. I mean, if I hadn't have had that tool, I would never have got this filter off. That was really, really, really tight. I don't think they should need to be that tight, really. But, yeah, there we go. That's the oil coming out. And out of the filter, trying to do this stupidly, filming with one hand, never a great idea. Okay, so yeah, that's the filter off. And obviously we'll be putting a new filter on. Which has all worked well because the bike's done 900 miles. So that's like, it's just about running now. So it's just about due for an oil change really, after being run in. So, it's all worked out well. So we'll put a new filter on, etc. And we'll get that sorted. Good. There, and that's the new oil filter in place. Just done up hand tight, but only with hand, no tool on it, and then the locking strap put on, which goes around this weird spigot and allegedly stops it from coming undone. So, although I don't think it would come undone anyway, but obviously they thought it was the reason for putting it there. Anyway, in position. Okay, so I'm now going to drain the oil out of the primary chain case, or at least I'm going to remove that's the drain plug and then the chain inspection plug. I want to see how much oil is in here, if any. If it's been converted to belt drive, there's a possibility it's being run dry without any oil. There's also a possibility that because it's been stood so long in its wet sump, that oil has migrated into the primary chain case from the sump. Even though there's an oil seal, it can sort of seep through over time. So I'm interested to see how much oil, if any, we're getting out of this primary chain case, and to see if we can see if it's primary chain still, or it's got a belt conversion on, because Norvil did offer as an optional extra when they built this, you could specify a belt drive, and I know that it's already got a couple of optional extras, that stainless steel bolts all the way through and the uprated head steady. I think they're optional extras. So maybe the chap who had this built went for all the optional extras, I don't know, but Norvil don't have the records for this bike. That's because they don't keep them for longer than 6 years, and this is 10 years old, so they can't tell us what upgrades it had and what it hasn't. So I'll remove these two, and then we can see what we can see in the primary chain case. I'll also remove that's the timing aperture, so we can check the timing. I'm sure that'll be spot on, but we'll check it anyway. And that's for adjusting the clutch. I'll leave those in place probably for now, but I'll just take those off for inspection later on. We may end up removing the whole primary chain case, so I'm not sure. There's no real reason to, unless there's a problem there, and I can't foresee a problem, so I think we'll be okay. Okie dokie. So I've removed all the plugs from the primary chain case, the outer chain case, and sure enough, absolutely bone dry in there. Why bone dry? Because it is indeed got a belt drive conversion and a different clutch. Now Will we be able to see in here? Almost certainly not. If I had a pro camera, we'd be able to do it, but of course I haven't. Well, anyway, no, you can't see it. I can see it, but it's just too weird an angle. Anyway, just down the bottom there, I promise you, there is a belt drive and a different clutch. I'm not sure if it's a multi-plate clutch. It's a diaphragm clutch, but it's not standard. Just put it in a few times, nice and light. And obviously, I think that's designed to be run dry. I think I'm right in saying you can run the normal multi-plate clutches dry as well. They were actually designed to run out of oil, but don't take my word for it. But anyway, this has got the belt drive and a different clutch on it. But I think the clutch has changed, I think, because you have to change the chain wheel rather than the fact that you needed a different clutch. I don't know, but this is certainly a different clutch. It's very light, works well. We've got a brand new belt on it. I'm going to ring Norvil. I think the belt's going to be okay because it looks, you can't see it, but I can peer at it and it looks absolutely perfect condition. But obviously, with age, like tyres and that, they can perish and so on. So I'll give them a ring and ask someone at the door and ask if there's a sort of shelf life for it. But yeah, so that's running totally dry, the primary chain case, which is nice. No chance of any oil leaks. Right, so these are now ready to be put back in the sump, the filter and the drain plug with a magnetic collector on it. So I've got new gasket, washer gasket, new sort of sealing washer for the filter, because that's a crushable one. You can see that one's probably just been crushed already. So ideally you want to use a new one, not anneal it. Now I could have annealed this one, but I've got a new one. Note that they're different washers. So that's the right washer according to Andover Norton, and that's the right washer according to Norvil. So because that's the one that was on there, so I'm assuming that Norvil fitted it. So interesting to note we got different washers. Right, anyway, just gonna pop those on. I should really anneal that, but I think it's fine. Like I say, sometimes you never know how long they've been sitting on a supplier's shelf for, but I think that one's fine. So we'll pop those two back in now. And incidentally, while I remember, I don't think it matters which way these crush washers go. They've got like a join on one side. Can't quite see it on this. They tend to have a join. They've got something in the middle of them. And it doesn't matter which way up the join goes. I put the join towards the engine, but I don't think it matters. Right, well, here's a bit of controversy for you. So this is an inline anti-drain valve from RGM Motors, which I'm about to fit in the oil feed to the engine, because the engine is clearly wet sumping. The anti-drain valve that is supposed to work, that is fitted in the timing side of these bikes, these Mark IIIs, is clearly not working. Doesn't work on mine either. So I'm fitting an inline anti-drain valve as was fitted to Velocet bikes back in the day. It works. I've got them on both my Tridents, and I've got one on my Commando, and they work faultlessly. What all the malarkey is about them is that there's an anti-drain valve that goes in before the pump rather than after the pump. So the one that are factory fitted on a Mark III, there's none fitted on previous, they're after the pump. So they are pushed open. When the oil pumps oil, it pushes the anti-drain valve open. But as this is going in front of the pump, it's going to be sucking the pump open. And there is the theoretical, anyway, possibility that if there's a vacuum in this pipe, then it can't suck the oil, the valve won't open, and so you'll not have any oil pressure. I've never had any problem with mine whatsoever, so I'm going to go ahead, because I hate that wet sumping so much. I'm going to fit the anti-drain valve in here, which can easily be removed if people don't want it. So on a Commando, the inlet feed is on the outside and the outlet feed is on the inside. So in is out and out. Sorry, out is in and in is out. So they're reversed. So the outer pipe goes into the engine, the inner pipe goes out of the engine. Right. Just remember it's the other way around, in, out, and out, in. So I'm going to be cutting this pipe. I'm going to be fitting the anti-drain valve in there, and then we see how we get on. I'm fairly sure that the anti-drain valve that's already fitted in here isn't working and may well be jammed. What happens is they tend to jam open permanently. But we'll see how we get on. It may be that I remove this valve completely, but I think it'll be fine. Even if that valve is working, we should still have oil pressure to open both valves without any problem. But we'll see how we get on. Now it is controversial, but like I say, I've fitted them to all my 3 bikes have got anti-drain valves. I've taken them around Cadwell Park, I've taken them around Anglesey track. You know, I ride them hard, and I've never had any problem whatsoever. Good oil pressure. I've got oil pressure gauge obviously fitted to my Commando, and I've got oil warning lights on both the Tridents, and I've never had any problem at all. It may be that we do fit an oil pressure gauge to this bike for that reason. Now, I'll say again, some people, because I've got one on my Commando, some people say oil pressure gauge, it's like another worry gauge. There's mine. But in fact, I find it like a reassuring gauge. Have I got oil pressure? Look, oh yes, I have. Now, on an ordinary Commando, have you got oil pressure? You've no idea, because nothing's telling you. The only way of knowing is by taking the cap off and seeing if the oil's coming back. Now, if you're riding along, that's pretty hard to do. At any given moment, I can look down. It doesn't really matter. This is the important thing. It doesn't really matter that much what pressure it's showing. People get that's what people get hung up on. Oh, it's only showing like 40 or 30 or whatever. As long as there's oil pressure, you're okay. You know, okay, the engine might be a bit tired, but you're okay. It's when you've got no oil pressure that you've got a danger. And the only way you're going to know that is if you've got a warning light or a pressure gauge, and you haven't got one on the Commando. And I find that worrying myself, because I'm riding along, you know, have you got oil pressure? You know, you wouldn't know if you suddenly, you know, if the pipe comes off or something suddenly happens. You know, so I actually find my gauge reassuring. So it might well be that we put a gauge on this, because then you know you've got oil pressure. You're not like worried about it. It's there all the time. You can just glance down. Yeah, it's there. Anyway, it's you know, it's a matter of total personal choice. Some people will totally rail against them and say never fit them, and they'll give you 25 examples of friends whose bikes blew up as a result. In my of fitting a inline filter, in my book, to be honest, I think they either weren't fitted properly, or you know, something else went bang, and they're blaming the filter, because of course these engines do go bang. I don't want to worry you, but they do go bang no matter what. So when I say fitted properly, the only thing we have to do is when we put the oil filter in this pipe, I'm going to take this connection off and then suck the oil through, because as I said, to make sure there's oil in this pipe after I fitted the anti-drain valve, because if this pipe is empty, then there's a possibility where the air won't open, isn't enough to suck the valve open. So we'll prime this pipe, and that's the only thing you really have to do when you fit these, is to prime that pipe. And then what I'll do is I'll then probably loosen one of these joints and just check, which is that one, isn't it, that goes, yeah. I'll loosen this joint, the union that takes the oil up to the rockers, and just check, because I haven't got an oil pressure gauge at the moment. I just check we've got oil coming out of it, and I know that oil is, you know, we have oil pressure long before I check that it's coming, because it will take a while for it to go round and come back out here. And then, as I say, anyway, we might go ahead and fit a pressure gauge anyway. We'll see. Anyway, I'm going to cut this pipe, And then I'm going to fit this. The only thing you have to do is clearly marked on one end, it says in, and that goes towards the oil tank. That's the oil comes in that end and it goes out that end towards the engine. So of course the only thing you really need to do is make sure you've got it the right way round, otherwise you are in trouble. All that's in there is a ball and spring. So the like a ball bearing, and then there's a spring, and when it's sucked it opens that ball bearing, and when the sucking stops, the ball bearing seals again. Simple as that. But it works better that way, because that's exactly what they've got really to some extent in here, and certainly in the Tridents, but they just don't work. I think maybe because they're on the outlet side, you know, after the pump, I don't know, but they don't work. But these do. My Tridents, my Commando, they never wet sump. They're there all winter. They'll be there. There won't be any wet sumping at all. I don't have to worry about that. You know, and for me, that's worth it. You know, people say, "Oh, all I have to do is drain the oil before I start my bike." What? All I do is drain the oil before starting my bike? I mean, you know, come on, I want to get on it, push the buttons, or, you know, kick it over and off I go. I don't want to be there draining the oil and then pouring it back into the tank. No, anyway, whatever. And also, this is the thing, to my mind, on a Commando, well, it's not to my mind, this is fact. On a Commando, what happens is, if it wet sumps badly, then all of the oil, as has happened in this case, obviously over a long period of time, but it doesn't take that long. Anyway, all of the oil from the tank goes into the sump. So there's none in the tank. You then start the bike. Now, ironically, there's two things that happen. The worst thing that happens is that the engine then asks for oil. There isn't any oil because it's all in the sump. So ironically, the engine's full of oil, but there's no oil pressure because there's no oil going to the pump, because it's trying to suck the oil down here to the pump, and there isn't any because it's all in the engine. So you can be running that you know, for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever, until the oil finally, you know, it spurts oil back into here, then it fills up, then it goes in, and then you've got oil pressure. But, you know, you can do immense damage in that first 30 seconds. So, you know, that's really bad. Secondly, I think you can encourage oil leaks, especially on the Commando, because both pistons are going up and down at the same time, which is creating crankcase pressure. I know that we do have a breather, but it can be, you know, with the pistons going up, slapping a huge amount of oil in here that shouldn't be there. I'm sure it's going to only encourage oil leaks. I may be wrong, but that's the secondary. But the main thing to worry about is if all the oils come out, you know, then you start the engine, you've got no oil pressure. You're going to have to drain the oil first, put it back in the tank, then start it, which is the right faff. And so people don't do it, and so you run the engine without oil pressure. So to my mind, it's more dangerous not having a proper anti-drain valve than having one. Okay, I'm getting off. I can feel that I'm ranting a bit, so I'm going to calm back down again. And I'm going to fit this. Of course, it's a matter of total personal choice. That's all I can say. You want to fit one, fit one. If you don't, don't. But please don't rant on to people like me who have fitted them. Okay, it's a personal choice, and that's what we've done. Here we go. Okay, so the inline filter is now in place, and so we're going to put the oil pipe banjo back on to the oil tank, and this is the filter that goes through that banjo and screws into the oil tank. This is all nice and clean. The main thing is that if you ever take this off, then there are these two sort of aluminium, I think they are alloy washers that go either side of the banjo. So these are the old ones. Always replace them, because it can be a beggar to seal this joint here where it goes into the oil tank. So I'd always use new washers, because if it leaks, it's a pain, because then to repair it, you've got to drain all the oil out of the tank again, you know, before you can take this off, you know, so best to do it right first time. And there we have it. Put this back in, the filter with new washers around the banjo, and there's our online filter there. Inline filter. 8 times change when you keep saying it online instead of inline. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But that's good because we can put oil. We can put oil back in the engine now, because of course we've got a dry primary chain case, so we don't have to worry about that. And I'll feel a lot happier spinning the engine over, knowing we've got some oil. But before we do that, I'm going to undo this union and then suck the when there's oil in the tank. When I put oil back in, we'll suck oil through there to make sure there is oil in this pipe before turning the engine over again.